Another day and another big round of Nintendo Switch 2 news and updates to discuss, because you're probably well aware Nintendo is in full-on marketing mode right now for this brand new console that will be launching on June 5th. And while we have Treehouse presentations that are revealing a lot of new gameplay snippets we haven't seen before of the launch lineup of the Nintendo Switch 2 games, in this video I actually want to focus on a lot of the unanswered console questions that we haven't seen necessarily the best clarification on so far, because while the Switch 2 Direct was excellent in terms of game announcements, it definitely left a lot on the table in terms of what is this console's power level actually going to look like. And fortunately, we have Nvidia giving us some clarification to how much more powerful this new GPU and chipset is inside the Switch 2 when compared to Switch 1. We have some estimates for the battery life of this console from IGN, which is actually helpful information that you're going to want to know. And unfortunately, it is not as good of a battery life as the Switch OLED. There's clarification on what controllers are supported with Nintendo Switch 2 if you own a lot on the Switch 1 right now. And I want to briefly revisit the physical game key card situation, because there was a lot of confusion around that, myself included, when I was first seeing the headlines diving into what that is. And while it is going to be an option for developers, we may see a lot of developers opt to use it. There are also cases that have been brought up where we're not going to have to worry about every game being just a download code on a physical cartridge. And it does seem like it is going to be very much a case-by-case basis. And now we have a better explanation of exactly how it works. So we're going to get on the same page with all of these details. Before we do, make sure you like, subscribe, and turn on your bell notification to join Sunbro Nation if you're new here. And I want to first kick it off right over at Go Nintendo, where you can see the article on screen, which is actually Nvidia directly sharing information on their involvement with the Nintendo Switch 2 chipset. And we have some new comparisons and power level type of statements we can make walking away from this that we did not know before. So we'll go through the article here where it kicks off. Nvidia shares more details on Switch 2 AI powered DLSS, ray tracing, and 4K features, technically speaking. The Nintendo Switch 2 unveiled April 2nd takes performance to the next level, powered by a custom NVIDIA processor featuring an NVIDIA GPU with dedicated ray tracing cores and tensor cores for stunning visuals and AI-driven enhancements. With 1,000 engineers, years of effort across every element from system and chip design to a custom GPU, APIs, and world-class development tools, the Nintendo Switch 2 brings major upgrades. The console enables up to 4K gaming and TV mode and up to 120 frames per second at 1080p in handheld mode. Nintendo Switch 2 also supports HDR and AI upscaling to sharpen visuals and smooth gameplay. This is confirmation, by the way, that Switch 2 is using DLSS, and we have that in this exact outline. AI and ray tracing for next level visuals. The new ray tracing cores being real-time ray tracing, delivering lifelike lighting, reflections, and shadows for more immersive worlds. Tensor cores power AI-driven features like deep learning super sampling, DLSS, boosting resolution for sharper details without sacrificing image quality. Tensor cores also enable AI-powered face tracking and background removal in video chat use cases, enhancing social gaming and streaming. That's what we saw with the chat with friends feature, where they're basically in the game chat and they can actually remove the background. That's all kind of AI at work there to remove your background, just have you in the image and overlaying it on top of your image. This is all just kind of some of the things that Nvidia has enabled with their more modern architecture. So with millions of players worldwide, the Nintendo Switch becomes a gaming powerhouse and home to Nintendo's storied franchises. Its hybrid design refines console gaming, bridging TV and handheld play. More power, smoother gameplay. With 10 times the graphics performance of the Nintendo Switch, the Nintendo Switch 2 delivers smoother gameplay and sharper visuals. So that's the first time we've heard that metric. 10 times the overall power from a graphical capability standpoint of the original Nintendo Switch is what we are going to with the Switch 2. So a massive jump forward. And of course, when you just say 10 times more powerful, it's hard to really grasp exactly what that means. But when optimized right and when the tools are utilized, the Switch 2 is going to be able to pull off some very impressive looking games, as some of them I've already seen the looks at, and you know, it's running some impressive games, some impressive looking games for sure. Tensor cores boost AI-powered graphics while keeping power consumption efficient. Ray tracing cores enhance in-game realism with dynamic lighting and natural reflections. Variable refresh rate, VRR, via NVIDIA G-Sync in handheld mode ensures ultra-smooth, hair-free gameplay. So that's where you can run something at 30, 40, 50 60 frames per second or have a dip with a dynamic resolution and not have such a jarring experience where it's dropping from like 60 to 30 or whatever the case is. So tools for developers, upgrades for players. Developers get improved game engines, better physics, and optimized APIs for faster, more efficient game creation. So just a lot of nice little tidbits of information outlined there in terms of how the raw power of the graphical capabilities of the Switch 2. And while Nintendo doesn't give us clock speeds and exact, power profiles that it's running and stuff, this is just kind of a high level. Listen, this is how much of an advancement this new modern architecture is over what was in the current generation Nintendo Switch. And what you care about at the end of the day is, do the games look good and impressive? And if they do, and they can run portably or in dock play, that's a win, obviously. So when you're talking about games like Elden Ring running and looking beautiful on the Switch, you're talking about games like Cyberpunk 2077, which is actually in the topic of conversations coming up for this whole game card situation, because surprisingly Cyberpunk's getting the treatment right, let's say, for its physical edition. But when you see those games running at a reasonable frame rate and on a hybrid console, it does help justify, of course, that $449 price point that Nintendo is asking for the base console at this point. So in terms of battery life, this is just quite honestly a downgrade from what we have today. So with you can see here IGN over on X, with higher resolution, frame rates, and better graphics comes more power needs, and the Nintendo Switch 2 will seemingly need more at the cost of battery life compared to its older siblings. So to kind of give you the breakdown of what it's looking like in terms of battery life compared to the original, the OLED model is rated for 4.5 to 9 hours in handheld mode. I haven't ever gotten 9 hours of gameplay out of an OLED, but I guess in theory, it's up to that amount of time when you're playing games. Now, you might remember the Switch V1 console had a shorter battery life quite significantly than the V2 refresh. And so that's what got it to that V2 refresh, is what got it to the 4.5 to 9 hours in handheld play. We used to have 2.5 to 6.5 hours on the original OG Switch. So if you have a V1 Switch, the battery life that you have on that is actually going to be very comparable to what we're looking at with the Switch 2. Switch Lite 3 to 7 hours, and the Switch 2 is rated for 2 to 6.5 hours. This is going to vary greatly depending on what type of game you are playing. A big open world game that's rendering things way off in the distance, like an Elden Ring or a Cyberpunk 2077, is obviously going to be using a lot more graphical capability to produce that image than something like a Hollow Knight Silksong, which you could probably crank up to 120 frames per second and actually, at that point drain some battery as well. But depending on what kind of resolution and frame rate you're running in handheld mode, because of course this mainly applies to handheld mode, it does not apply whenever it's in the dock connected to power. So depending on frame rate, resolution, and the scope of the game that you are playing, there is going to be as low as a 2-hour battery time for this Nintendo Switch 2. So something to be aware of. From there, shifting gears, what accessories that you own today will actually work with Nintendo Switch 2, and there's some good news on that front. So Switch 1 controllers can be used with Switch 2 exclusive games. That's a big deal because there are console generations, just like PS4 to PS5, where the PS4 controller was still great and working, but you had to use the PS5 controller for PS5 exclusive games. This is not the case for Nintendo Switch 2. So if you were still planning on holding on to your Nintendo Switch 1 products, you might be interested to know that its controllers are fully compatible with Switch 2, including its exclusive games. You have here, the Big N shared that news on its website. A note on the page states, Nintendo Switch controllers can be used wirelessly and are also compatible with Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games, but cannot be used if the games require features unique to the Joy-Con 2, such as mouse controls. So that's the one asterisk if you are playing a game that only supports mouse controls, which I'm not sure if that that chair pushing game is only mouse controls or not. That's probably the only one that I've seen so far that pops into my mind that might be exclusively for that optical sensor. But other than that, a bunch of different controllers came to Nintendo Switch 1 over the years. Aside from the Joy-Con, we saw things like the Pro Controller, the GameCube controller made for Smash Bros. Ultimate, and devices tying into classic hardware launches on Nintendo Switch Online. Thankfully, they can all be brought over. So even your NSO controllers, everything's going to work wirelessly, and that's obviously a big win. Now they do note here, and it is worth paying attention to, that if you want to use the C button's not there on those prior gen controllers, so you're going to have to go to the home menu to then pull that up a different way than clicking the brand new C button that Nintendo has on its current gen controllers, which is of course to be expected. Okay, shifting gears again, Nintendo Switch 2 game cards. So we have to clear up exactly what's going on with the game card situation, because there is going to be both. That's the first thing you have to know. There's going to be some games that you can purchase that are just going to be a download code on a cartridge, essentially a key to allow you to talk to Nintendo's servers to download that game. Now, this has been positioned by some people, you know, talking about this online as, oh, well, this is really only replacing those digital download code games. You know, like, so right now today, you might go buy a physical box that literally just has a card in there with a code on it. And that's actually a one-time use redemption code. So there's no resale value to that. And this actually does fix that issue for resale on those type of games, which is good. However, this does appear to just be an option for developers. So we may see a lot of developers and publishers actually opt to use the game key card. So while it might be saving you from those digital only case situations, you could also see a larger adaptation to this game key card because of the cost savings for the developers. So for example, here from Nintendo's post, game key cards are different from regular game cards because they don't contain the full game data. Instead, the game key card is your key to downloading the full game. But for example, Donkey Kong Bonanza, that will be a full game on the cartridge. Bravely Default Flying Fairy, for example, game key card, you can see it there at the bottom of the case and it's indicated. So that's what you're going to be looking at whenever you're trying to go through and determine if you're going to be picking up a physical game that actually has all of its information on there, it's a complete game on the cartridge, or is it just a game key card? And unfortunately, this is just tied to Play Asia. This may all be accurate. I've seen a lot of stuff change since all the Switch 2 information has been starting to come out. So, you know, take this with, I would say, just a little bit of a reservation that these things might not be final. But according to Play Asia's website, games like Street Fighter 6, Elden Ring, the Tarnished Edition, and Bravely Default, they're all going to be game key cards. So this is going to be the developer and publisher opting to not ship the game on the actual cartridge. Yes, it's a physical game key card that you can resell, but it's still essentially buying a physical product that is a key for a digital download. So unfortunate news, if that's the only way you can buy Elden Ring, there is going to be probably a world where I'm buying more digital games on the Switch 2 generation than I was before. May just be keeping it to first party Nintendo content at this point, kind of going back and forth on that decision in my head. But, you know, I want the whole game on the cartridge. Ideally, if I'm just buying a key card to own a game case, not quite as an attractive deal, in my opinion, for the long term of the game, because you are still totally tied to the server for that initial download and internet check to get the game playable. So take that for what you will. Some good news on this front, though, to kind of show that not every major game will be the game key card in this generation. Cyberpunk 2077 Ultimate Edition is $70 on Switch 2, runs at 40 frames per second in performance mode while docked. Physical release comes on a 64 gigabyte game card with no download required. So, good news scenario for Cyberpunk fans out there. You're getting the entire game, the full experience, all the DLC and everything included, out on June 5th for $70, and everything's on the cartridge. And it does look like 64 gigabytes is the high end of what these cartridges are going to support this generation. At least it's the highest we've heard of so far. And you know what? Even that 40 frames per second in performance mode, while some may not be happy with that, and it's not PC level play or anything by any means, but it is something that VRR is there for a reason, so you can run games at 40 and have them look smooth and everything. But, you know, at least in terms of performance aside, I'm sure there will be all types of deep dive Digital Foundry type videos on that. The no download required for a game as big as Cyberpunk on a 64 gigabyte cartridge is good to see that some developers and publishers will opt to do that, but no doubt I do think we're going to be in more of a situation this generation where physical games in some cases make less sense than they used to. But let me know your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comments down below. How are you feeling about the power levels of Nintendo Switch 2 with the more gameplay you've seen over the Treehouse presentations? We'll have some upcoming videos on deep dives into the games themselves. How are you feeling overall on the price of the software that's been the big point of contention online, the battery life, the Switch 1 controller support, all of that stuff. So make sure you share all your thoughts and feelings in the comments down below before you leave, regardless if we agree or disagree. Also make sure you like, subscribe, turn your notification bell. And with that, I've been Sunbro, you've been Nation. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.